The evacuation center in Geneva hummed with desperate activity as Dr. Elena Reyes reviewed the latest selection algorithms on her tablet. Outside the reinforced windows, protest crowds swelled despite the military cordons. Their signs told stories of families torn apart by cold mathematics and quota systems. "The revisions to Group C are complete," said Commander Samira Khalid, her uniform pressed, but her eyes revealing sleepless nights. "We've prioritized genetic diversity as requested, but the political pressure is mounting. 3 more council members have demanded preferential spots for their families." Alina set down her tablet, the blue light reflecting off her weary face. "And what did you tell them?" "The same thing you told the president. Extinction doesn't care about political capital." A thin smile crossed Alina's face as she turned to the wall-sized projection of Earth. Overlaid atop the familiar continents was the approaching veil, its violet edge now visible to orbital telescopes. 16 ships remained, with capacity for 15% of humanity. Over 1 billion people left behind for each one who would escape. "Show me the new manifest," Alina said. The projection changed to display thousands of names, organized by ship and section. Farmers beside quantum physicists, teachers alongside engineers, children next to combat veterans. Humanity distilled to its essential components, not by privilege or power, but potential for survival. An alert flashed across her personal comms, a private message from the xenorchaeology team in Antarctica. Alina's pulse quickened as she opened the encrypted file. The team had been excavating the recently discovered ruins beneath the ice shelf, racing against both the veil and melting glaciers. The message contained a single image, a carved stone panel showing a wave of energy flowing between stars, with figures fleeing before it. Carbon dating placed it at over 50,000 years old. "They knew," Alina whispered. "Someone knew this was coming." A violent tremor shook the building, rattling fixtures and sending dust cascading from ceiling panels. The veil's gravitational precursor waves had begun, ahead of schedule. "Final boarding commences in 30 minutes, announced the facility's communication system. "All selected personnel report to transport terminals immediately." Alina transferred the ancient image to her secure implant and erased the original message. Some truths were too dangerous, too likely to spark hopeless last-minute resistance. The veil wasn't a random cosmic event. The pattern of its approach, the targeted nature of its effects, all suggested intelligent design. Someone or something had triggered this extinction event. As Alina walked toward her designated shuttle, she passed families saying final goodbyes. Parents handing children to strangers who had received selection while they themselves had not. Their sacrifice hollowed her. These parents would die so their genetic legacy might continue among the stars. She clutched her tablet tighter. The ancient carving suggested humanity wasn't the first species to face the veil, but Alina had made one crucial decision. They would be the first to survive it. The Arconian quarantine net stretched across the void, its energy filaments pulsing with opalescent light. Captain Thomas Chen studied it from the observation deck of the Resilience, his vessel dwarfed by the massive colony ships it was tasked to protect. "Their technology is unlike anything I've ever seen," remarked Lieutenant Kaya Singh, her dark eyes reflecting the alien barrier. "It's almost organic in nature." Chen nodded, his weathered face betraying no emotion. Yet they themselves are anything but. 3 days of diplomacy, and they haven't once deviated from protocol. The diplomatic mission had begun with such promise. The Arconians, with their tall frames and skin that shifted colors with their moods, had received the human delegation with elaborate ceremony aboard their flagship, the Immutable Decree. Their universal translators had quickly adapted to human language, and initial exchanges suggested a civilization of order and reason. Everything changed when the Arconians requested data on Earth's final moments. Dr. Reyes had shared the sensor logs, hoping for insight. Instead, the Arconian Supreme Consul's skin had flushed crimson with alarm patterns, and the delegation was immediately escorted back to their shuttle. A quantum burst interrupted Chen's thoughts as his comm officer patched through an encrypted transmission from Dr. Reyes. Her holographic form appeared, flickering slightly. "Time is short, Captain," she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "I just concluded a clandestine meeting with Arconian Science Director Valen. The Empire has encountered Veil survivors before." Chen's expression darkened. "And none survived longer than a solar cycle. They believe we're infected with what they call quantum decay, that the Veil rewrites organic matter at a fundamental level." "Are we?" Chen asked directly. "Unknown. Our medical scans show no anomalies, but their technology is centuries ahead of ours." She paused. "Valen risked everything to tell me the immutable decree has received sterilization protocols from Arconian High Command." Chen turned to his tactical officer. "How many warships have moved into position?" "7, sir. All heavily armed." "And the energy barrier?" "It's not just containing us," Singh replied, her voice dropping. "The fluctuation patterns suggest it's scanning our ships, cataloging us." Alina's hologram looked over her shoulder. "I need to go." Valen suggested another reason for their fear, something about prophecies and retribution. I couldn't get details. Her image flickered. "Chen, they're not just containing a potential contagion. They're containing a potential threat." After the transmission ended, Chen spent exactly 30 seconds in contemplation before activating the fleet-wide emergency channel. "All ships, this is Captain Chen. Execute emergency protocol starburst. I repeat, execute starburst." He turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for the Carina Nebula. We'll lose them in the radiation fields." As the human fleet burst into simultaneous action, breaking formation and accelerating in different vectors, Chen watched the Arconian ships respond with mechanical precision. They were technologically superior but predictable, following established doctrine rather than adapting to the chaotic human maneuvers. "They may have better ships," Chen murmured, "but we have something they don't understand: the desperation of the hunted." The nebula's swirling gases cast an eerie blue glow through the viewports of the horizon as Battle Group Epsilon limped toward the uncharted planet. Navigation systems flickered unreliably, damaged by the radiation fields they had used to evade Arconian pursuit. "Atmospheric analysis confirms breathable air," announced Science Officer Maya Okafor, her voice betraying both exhaustion and excitement. "Nitrogen-oxygen mix similar to Earth, with slightly higher carbon dioxide levels. Water exists in abundance." Admiral Rice studied the holographic projection of the blue-green world. After months of rationed supplies and recycled air, it seemed too perfect, a paradise appearing just when their situation was most desperate. "And the radiation readings?" she asked. "Within acceptable parameters. Whatever effect the Veil had on human physiology, it seems to have increased our radiation tolerance by 17%. Rice exchanged glances with Captain Chen. One more unexpected change to add to their growing list of post-Veil anomalies. "Prepare landing parties," Rice ordered. "Medical team first, then agricultural specialists. Security personnel in defensive formation only. No aggressive posturing if we encounter native life." As the shuttles descended through wispy clouds, passengers pressed against viewports, many weeping at the sight of open skies and verdant forests after years confined to sterile ships. The landing zone, a clearing near the edge of a vast forest, erupted in cheers as the first humans stepped onto solid ground. Dr. Okafor moved methodically through the landing site, her sample kit collecting soil, water, and plant matter for analysis. The trees surrounding the clearing stood impossibly tall, their trunks iridescent with a bark that seemed to shimmer between purple and blue. As sunset approached, she noticed something strange. Patches of the forest began to emit a soft bioluminescence, pulsing in what appeared to be synchronized patterns. "Admiral," she called over the comm, "you need to see this." By nightfall, the entire command staff stood at the forest's edge, watching as waves of light moved through the trees. Not random, but organized, like signals passed from one organism to another. "It's communicating," whispered Chen. Or they are, corrected Okafor. These aren't individual trees as we understand them. The root systems show signs of extensive interconnection. I believe we're looking at extensions of a single organism, or a collective of organisms with a unified consciousness. As if responding to her assessment, a new pattern of lights emerge, forming concentric circles centered precisely on the human gathering. The forest was watching them. Lieutenant Kaya Singh raised her scanner. Movement detected, 50 meters in. Non-linear patterns, consistent with deliberate approach. Hold positions, ordered Chen, raising a hand to steady nervous security personnel. No weapons unless directly threatened. The luminescent patterns intensified. The first human to make physical contact with the mycelian tendrils was not a scientist or a diplomat, but Chief Engineer Haruki Tanaka, whose curiosity exceeded his caution. The moment his fingertips touched the luminescent strand, he gasped and fell to his knees, eyes wide as the bioluminescent patterns raced up his arm like living circuitry. Haruka. Dr. Okafor rushed forward despite Chen's restraining hand. It's vast, Tanaka whispered, his eyes reflecting the same patterns now spreading beneath his skin. They're everywhere, beneath us, around us, a network spanning the entire planet. The security team raised weapons, but Rais ordered them down with a sharp gesture. Are you in pain? Okafor asked, scanning Tanaka's vital signs. No, he replied, wonder filling his voice. I can feel them trying to organize their thoughts into concepts I can understand. They've never encountered beings like us, individual consciousnesses moving separately from a central network. Over the next 72 hours, contact protocols evolved rapidly. 7 volunteers joined Tanaka in direct neural connection with what they now called the Mycelian Collective. Translators worked frantically to create a shared language while medical teams monitored the connected humans for signs of adverse effects. The Mycelians communicated primarily through images and sensations rather than linear language. They conveyed their history, millions of years of peaceful evolution, developing a consciousness that existed simultaneously across billions of connected nodes. No concept of warfare existed in their understanding until recently, when an aggressive foreign organism began attacking their network. It's a parasite, explained Okafor during the emergency council meeting. Something that evolved off-world and arrived via asteroid impact approximately 200 years ago. It's been consuming the mycelian network, section by section. And how does this concern us? Asked Counselor Zhang, representing the civilian colonists. The answer came as a high-pitched alarm cut through the room. Lieutenant Singh burst through the doors, her expression grim. Arconian vessel detected entering orbit, she reported. Heavy-class destroyer. They've already launched atmospheric craft. Chen was immediately on his feet. How the hell did they find us so quickly? The quantum wake from our ships, Rais replied. They must have developed tracking technology specific to veil-affected matter. Evacuation protocols. Chen began, but was interrupted as the ground beneath them trembled. Through the command center windows, they watched in astonishment as massive roots erupted from the soil, twisting skyward like living towers. Tanaka, his skin now permanently traced with glowing mycelial patterns, smiled. They're activating their defense systems. The Mycelians consider us potentially symbiotic. The Arconians, after scanning their ship's intent, they consider parasitic. As the Arconian landing craft descended, they were met not by human weapons, but by a forest that had awakened to warfare. Tangled masses of luminescent roots enveloped the first ship, crushing metal as easily as paper. The second pilot, witnessing this, attempted retreat only to be ensnared by airborne spores that crystallized across the vessel's hull, disabling its systems. My God, whispered Rais, watching the forest defend them. What have we found? Not what, corrected Okafor, studying the latest neural scans from the connected volunteers. Who? And they're offering us something extraordinary. a proposal that might save both our species. Captain Chen crouched in the maintenance shaft of the Arconian research facility, his modified body nearly invisible in the dim light. The luminescent mycelial patterns beneath his skin had been temporarily suppressed with a compound developed by Dr. Okafor, though he could still feel the network humming at the edges of his consciousness. "Security drones approaching Section 7, whispered the collective voice of the mycelian network in his mind. The fungal species had representatives on over a dozen worlds, having traveled as microscopic spores on meteorites throughout the centuries. These distant cousins of Chen's mycelian allies now served as his eyes and ears deep in enemy territory. Chen remained motionless as the hovering security units passed, their sensors sweeping harmlessly over his position. The mycelian bond had altered his body chemistry just enough to confuse Arconian detection systems. Another unexpected benefit of the symbiosis. The intelligence mission had already yielded results beyond their expectations. After accessing 3 separate data repositories, Chen had confirmed Dr. Rice's theory. The veil was artificial, a weapon of unimaginable power created eons ago and stolen by early Arconians before they understood its true nature. Eastern repository secure, came the thought voice of Elise Mbiki, another infiltrator operating 3 levels below. Accessing historical archives now, Chen acknowledged with a mental pulse as he moved deeper into the facility. His target lay ahead, the central command hub where strategic communications were processed. The mycelians provided a 3-dimensional map in his mind, highlighting optimal paths and potential threats. A sudden surge of alarm rippled through the network. "Captain," came Mbiki's urgent thought voice. "You need to see this data immediately." Chen closed his eyes, allowing the collective to transmit Mbiki's discovery directly to his consciousness. What he witnessed made his blood run cold. Detailed plans for a massive fleet deployment toward New Haven. The Arconians had somehow triangulated their colony's position and were preparing not just an attack, but complete sterilization of the planet. "We need to warn the colony," Chen thought, knowing the mycelian network couldn't transmit across interstellar distances. "There is another way," suggested the collective voice. "The Arconians fear prophecy. We could use that fear." Chen understood immediately. Moving with renewed purpose, he navigated to the command hub and planted the devices Dr. Reyes had prepared, quantum entangled transmitters disguised as standard Arconian technology. But instead of sabotaging their communications as originally planned, he reprogrammed them to broadcast something far more psychologically devastating. Across the Arconian Empire, on military vessels and civilian centers alike, displays flickered to show the same image. An ancient Arconian prophecy symbol representing the return of the consumed, followed by footage of humans with mycelian patterns flowing beneath their skin, speaking perfect Arconian while surrounded by impossible biological technology. "We know what you did," said the recorded message, Alina's words carefully chosen after studying Arconian cultural psychology. "We know what you stole. We know what you released. And now, as was foretold, we have returned." The message ended with the coordinates of an uninhabited system far from New Haven, a diversion that would buy them precious time while sowing doubt and fear throughout Arconian society. As Chen made his escape through ventilation systems now opened by mycelian growth, he smiled grimly. Operation Ghostlight had begun. The diplomatic chamber aboard the Resilience had been transformed to accommodate beings who experienced reality in profoundly different ways. Crystalline platforms supported the silicon-based lithoid representatives, whose faceted bodies refracted light into dazzling patterns. Carefully calibrated gravity fields contained the gaseous aetheri delegates, their swirling azure forms constantly shifting. Microscopic collective ambassadors inhabited a specialized suspension chamber, their trillion-strong consensus visible as shimmering dots of light. Admiral Chen, his skin now permanently marked with luminescent mycelian patterns, stood at the center of this gathering of species the Arconian Empire had deemed too alien for inclusion. "The Mosaic Alliance is no longer merely theoretical," he announced, his voice translated simultaneously into light patterns, chemical signatures, and quantum fluctuations for the various attendees. As of today, 7 former Arconian outpost worlds have declared independence under our mutual protection. The lithoid elder, a crystalline entity over 900 years old, vibrated at a frequency that translated as cautious optimism. The Arconians will respond with overwhelming force. Their doctrine permits nothing less than absolute dominance. They already have, Chen replied, activating the holographic display at the center of the chamber. It showed Arconian warships converging on the coordinates broadcast during Operation Ghostlight, the false location planted to draw their forces away from actual Alliance territories. Their predictability is our advantage, contributed Dr. Sophia Okafor, now the foremost expert on cross-species biology. They follow established protocols even when those protocols lead them into traps. The Aetheri representative, recognizable by the distinctive electric blue spiral in their gaseous form, pulsed with skepticism. Arconian technological superiority cannot be overcome by misdirection alone. Agreed, Chen said, which is why we've been developing these. The display shifted to show schematics of hybrid technology. Lithoid crystal lattices capable of channeling Aetheri energy fields, controlled by collective processing systems, all grown within mycelial organic frameworks. Human engineers had designed interfaces allowing these incompatible technologies to work in harmony, creating weapons and defensive systems unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Impossible, vibrated the lithoid elder. Our crystalline matrices cannot interface with gaseous energy patterns. They can't, confirmed Okafor, without a mediating structure. She gestured to her own arm, where mycelial patterns flowed beneath her skin. Just as humans serve as bridges between your consciousnesses, mycelial networks can serve as bridges between your technologies. The collective's representative pulsed rapidly, billions of microscopic entities reaching consensus in seconds. The humans understand hybridization at a fundamental level because they themselves are becoming hybrids. Their neural patterns show increasing complexity since bonding with the mycelians. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled among the delegates. The Arconians had built their empire on forced conformity, on making the galaxy adapt to them. Humans, in stark contrast, adapted themselves to the galaxy, finding strength in diversification rather than standardization. We don't need to defeat the Arconian Empire, Chen said quietly. We need to transform it, one world at a time, offering something it cannot, belonging without surrendering identity. As if on cue, the quantum communicator activated, showing simultaneous uprisings on 3 more Arconian border worlds. The revolutionaries carried no standard weapons, but wielded hybrid technologies no Imperial scanner could properly identify. Above each planetary capital, the same message appeared in the sky: join the mosaic. Remain unique. Become stronger. The Imperial Forum towered above them, its crystalline spires reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Dr. Elena Reyes, her frail body now more luminescent than flesh after decades of deepening symbiosis with the mycelial network, stood at the center of the human delegation. The journey to the Arconian capital world had been perilous, passing through unstable rifts in space-time created by the Empire's desperate activation of dormant veil technology. Their fear has made them reckless, observed Zora, the Imperial princess who had secretly contacted the Mosaic Alliance after witnessing the spreading rifts. Her iridescent skin reflected troubled patterns of amber and violet, emotions visible for those who knew how to read Arconian biology. Fear often does, Elena replied, her voice carrying the harmonics of the collective consciousness she now partially inhabited. But fear can also pave the way for change when nothing else will. The Imperial Guard surrounded them as they ascended the grand staircase, their ceremonial weapons concealing deadly technology. Intelligence reports suggested the Imperial leadership was divided, hardliners demanding the execution of these human abominations, moderates arguing for diplomatic solutions to the growing rift crisis. Inside the forum's central chamber, thousands of Arconian representatives from across the Empire had gathered. The elegant, tall aliens muttered as the human delegation entered, some recoiling visibly from the mycelian patterns flowing beneath human skin, others leaning forward with scientific curiosity. Supreme Consul Vex rose from the central dais, his elaborate regalia signifying 10,000 years of unbroken Arconian rule. "You come before us claiming to offer salvation," his voice boomed across the chamber. "Yet you bear the marks of the very corruption we have fought to contain." Alina stepped forward, activating the holographic display that showcased the expanding rifts, threatening to destabilize a dozen core Arconian worlds. "What you call corruption, we call adaptation. What you fear as our revenge, we offer as mutual preservation." The display shifted to show the hybrid technology developed by the Mosaic Alliance, specifically the rift stabilization fields successfully deployed on border worlds. The chamber erupted in murmurs as the data streamed across their neural interfaces. "Impossible," declared Science Minister Krell. "These energy signatures violate fundamental physical constants. Only those constants recognized by Arconian science," Alina countered. "The universe is vaster and stranger than your empirical framework admits." Princess Zora moved to stand beside Alina, a shocking breach of protocol that silenced the chamber instantly. "I have witnessed their methods firsthand," she announced. "When the first rift appeared on Elysium Colony, it was not our technologies that saved 10 million lives, but theirs." The Supreme Consul's skin darkened with anger patterns. "You conspired with these creatures against your own kind, to save our kind," Zara replied evenly. "The ancient texts speak of the return of those consumed by the veil, yes, but they do not speak only of vengeance. Read the complete prophecies, not just the portions that justify our fear." From within her ceremonial robes, she withdrew an artifact that caused gasps throughout the chamber. The original crystal tablet containing the complete prophecy, thought lost for millennia. Its surface glowed as she read the final passage. "And those who return shall carry both judgment and mercy. In their transformation lies the seed of our own. What was stolen must be acknowledged, what was broken must be healed, and what was separate must become whole." Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Resilience, now more a living entity than a vessel. Decades of integration with mycelian technology had transformed the ship's systems into a hybrid of mechanical precision and organic adaptability. Through the viewport stretched Earth's solar system, a sight no human had beheld for 50 years. "Approaching orbital insertion," announced Lieutenant Commander Yamada, her young face bearing only the beginning stages of mycelian symbiosis, the faint luminescent patterns that marked this generation of humanity. "Life signs confirmed," reported Dr. Javier Santos, grandson of one of the original colony scientists. "Microbial activity in Earth's oceans exceeds projected models by 43%. Chen nodded, emotion tightening his throat. When they had fled Earth half a century ago, they'd left behind a dying world. Now, against all scientific prediction, life was returning, accelerated by the same veil energies that had initially devastated the planet. "The veil doesn't just destroy," came the familiar harmonic voice of Alina Reyes through the ship's communication system. Her physical body had long since been integrated into the vast mycelian network, spanning hundreds of worlds, her consciousness existing primarily as patterns of thought and energy. It transforms. The ancient weapons designers understood this, destruction and creation in perfect balance. The Concord delegation had gathered in the ship's Grand Assembly Hall, representatives from over 70 species, once divided by biological incompatibility and cultural misunderstanding, now united under the principles of the Mosaic. The former Arconian Supreme Consul Vex, now serving as cultural liaison after the peaceful integration of the Empire, stood beside the crystalline lithoid elder. The aetheri and collective representatives occupied their specialized environments, while a dozen other species filled the chamber with a riot of forms and colors. "Begin the survey operations," Chen ordered. Standard Concord protocols for potential receding worlds. As specialized craft deployed toward Earth's surface, Chen felt a familiar presence touch his mind. Alina, reaching through the mycelial pathways that connected them across vast distances. "Can you see it?" her thought voice asked, carrying wonder that transcended her transformed state. Not just Earth's rebirth, but what it represents. Chen could. Earth, once thought lost forever, was following a pattern they'd now witnessed on other Veil-affected worlds throughout the galaxy. Not simple restoration, but evolution accelerated beyond normal parameters. Life finding new forms, new resilience. He moved to the center of the assembly hall, addressing the gathered representatives. What we witness today is not merely the potential rebirth of humanity's homeworld, but confirmation of the principle upon which we built the Concord. Transformation, not destruction, is the universe's fundamental constant. The Arconian Liaison's skin rippled with colors denoting deep reflection. My ancestors feared change above all else. We thought preservation of our way meant resistance to all outside influence. A common misconception, Chen replied with gentle humor. One humanity might have shared had circumstances been different. On the main display, images from the survey craft showed Earth's oceans teeming with simple organisms already demonstrating unusual properties, accelerated adaptation, bioluminescent communication, and coordinated behavior patterns reminiscent of the mycelial networks. Project Renaissance begins today, Chen announced to the assembly. Not to restore what was lost, but to nurture what is becoming. In orbit above the reawakening Earth, representatives of civilizations that had once feared and fought each other stood together, witnessing the ultimate lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. Survival was not about conquest or dominance, but about finding harmony through diversity and adaptation in an ever-changing cosmos.